Okay, welcome to our Monday Night Moshiach Matters class, where we delve into Geula and Mashiach and prepare ourselves for the imminent, full, and final redemption. Let's get cracking here. Okay, we're in Parshas Re'eh Aleph. Parshas Re'eh Korin Liolam Bizman Hashach L'Chodesh Elul. That all the time Parshas Re'eh is learned right around the time of the month of Elul. And most of the time, it occurs on Shabbos Mavarchim for Rosh Chodesh Elul, which is the case this year as well. Rosh Chodesh Elul. V'tzreich lahaven hakasha rashachas parshas Re'eh Chodesh Elul. V'lachora hem the Rabba ininem hafachim zemazeh. So the Rebbe says, what is the connection to this week's Parsha, Re'eh, and to the month of Elul? Seemingly, these two seem to be opposites. In the matter of Rosh Chodesh Elul, of the Chodesh Elul, the month of Elul, we know that Elul, which is the Hebrew letters of Aleph, Lamed, Vav, Lamed, is a Rosh Tevis, or an acronym for Ani Lododi Vadodi Li. I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me. Avodas hadam melamata lemaila. Where the general service is what we say from below to above, meaning that it is our work. It's the time of tshuva. It's the time of returning to God. And then in kind, dodili, God responds to us in like kind. The Elu Parshas Re'eh and Parshas Re'eh Anochi Nosei Nefnecha Hayom Bracha. The opening of this week's parsha says, "Look, I am placing before you today a blessing." And this is emphasizing the opposite energy, what we say from above to below, meaning God is saying, "Look, I'm giving you a blessing." In other words, it means it's showing that the impetus to start this process is coming from God, whereas in the month of Elul, the impetus to start the process of connecting to God is starting from us, and then God responds. So it seems to be a contradiction between the month of Elul and Parshas Re'eh. Base. And there is to add to this and emphasize this energy of drawing down from above to below. Now we're going to break down this pasuk of look, I'm placing before you today a blessing. And let's take that and delve a little bit deeper into it. And again, just to understand this energy, God created the world, what we say is the Rusa de Le'eda. In other words, no one deserves to be alive. We didn't do anything where we say, God, you owe us life, right? In other words, it was through God's kindness, through his chesed, that he decided to create the world. And he decided to create us and give us the opportunity to be his partners in creation. But he didn't need to do so. And I don't think anyone in the world could claim that God owes them something, that they deserved to be put into the world. Nevertheless, God did it out of his kindness. And basically the way God set up the world and the universe is that I'm making the first move. In other words, God said, I'm going to create you, and I'm going to create the world, and I'm going to bring enough energy into the world and into you to sustain you until I decide that your time is up in this world, without any need for you to do anything in return, just out of my kindness. But everyone doesn't like, especially Yidden, we don't like to have the minimal, right? We want to have the most. So if God is doing just the basic to keep us alive, he also is saying, but I'm giving you the opportunity to have blessings, big blessings, lots of success in lots of different matters, if in fact you follow my ways. And by following my ways, it causes what we call a derusa dilatata, meaning that we have to then, God says, here's my Torah, here are my mitzvot, here's the opportunity to pray. The more you work to connect to me, God says, the more I will connect to you. In other words, the more energy you put towards me, the more energy you get out. It's a basic fundament of all of reality. Life is not that complex. It's not easy, but it's not complex. You get out what you put in. There's an old saying, people who work hard are the ones who get lucky. So if you don't want to put effort into anything, then you're going to most likely get minimal results. On the other hand, the more effort you put towards success in any area in life, the more blessings or success you're going to get. So that's the idea of an arousal from below. The month of Elul is our time to do tshuva. We prepare for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where it's our chance to connect more to God. And in return, God draws down further energy and blessing to us. Okay, now let's look at the fact of Persis Re'eh, which seems to be the opposite of God saying, look, I'm putting before you today a blessing. In other words, it seems to be saying that God is saying, I'm giving you the blessing without you having to put extra effort in. So let's look at the words in this pasuk. Re'eh. Re'eh sh'lamayla meshmiya. Seeing is above hearing, right? It's a basic idea. Machalukim shebenehem. What's the difference? Shashmiya hi milamata lamayla. Hearing is what we say from below to above. What does it mean? Shetoifes prati la'achar prati. Al klal l'se'inin. When you hear something, and someone's describing something to you or explaining something to you, you're slowly putting pieces together of a puzzle, if you will, where you're beginning to start to focus in on what it is that you're hearing. You're building it up. On the other hand, you're seeing, this is from above to below. The general idea comes first and then the specific after. When you see something, you see it. And then afterwards, you see the general thing, and then you start breaking down all the details of what you're saying. Anochi, hoda'as atzmuso mechuso derakagba v'natsut. So Anochi is referring to the very essence and being of God. It's a very high level that is above what we say is Ani. Anochi, כשמעומדים סתם אומר אני לפלוני, כשמודיע דרך הגבוה ונתנסות אמר אנוכי. כמו אנוכי הוראה, ומדגש ההפרש בין אני לאנוכי, ואז כף. So ani is a much lower dimension of God, if you will. It's an I, but anochi is a higher, what we say, level of God's referring to himself. And the difference in the word ani, anochi, is a chaf. And that chaf represents keter. And keter is a crown. And crown is indicating God's level, which is what we said is roy maimot, which is infinitely above creation. So the word anochi is referring to a very high level of godly energy. Notain, milamar lamata. Again, this is from above to below, specifically saying that God is giving. He said, I'm the one who's giving to you. Lifnechem, sheperusha lepinimosichem, shebezeh mudgash yoiser hamshachem milamar lamata. Again, it's an energy before you, where God is the one who is the starter of this process, the impetus, if you will, where He is saying, "I'm putting lefnechem before you." It's referring to an inner dimension. Lifnechem literally doesn't mean just before you; it means before you, in you, like in a very deep, penetrating way. And afterwards, it comes out to the what we say is chitzonius, the more revealed dimension. But lifnechem is referring to God's placing this energy or this blessing deep inside of us, into our soul, if you will. And hayom, day. We know in the beginning God called light day, right? God created light and called it day. Umara gam al chitzonius. שהארזל כל המקרים שנאמר היום הוא נצחי לעולם גם היום הזה. היום ממש, מכיוון שהמשך היא מלמעלה למטה. הרי הוא באופן קבוע נצחי. It's referring to a day or a light that is eternal, which will happen when Moshiach comes. Will there be eternal light or eternal day? And that's referring to, again, a blessing from God from above to below. Bracha, she'enini hamshacha. Again, this is a blessing from above to below. It's a blessing. Laham shleimos b'bracha madrega na'ilas b'yosher shehu shehi b'chinas satom And so this is emphasizing a very high level that is not understandable. In other words, a blessing that is above comprehension, if you will. Ki'inyan Haggadah b'Masechtas Marach, shel shlach Rashbi es banoi l'Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Yehuda, shibrachu ois amidochu. Ova haver in the Rashbi Amar Shiyesa Isa Apirsha explains that a blessing given through Rashbi. She'inin Shemach b'chinas al yor yois der mashina hefek chalawos lebracha. And we see the opposite of blessing, of course, is a curse. K'moshe hatshuva gedura b'chinas tzaddik al yidei shahoishech hafech leor. Mashina hafech marada toiv zehu guvua yoiser b'chinas toiv etz. And referring to this blessing that is coming, that God is giving us, that he's transforming darkness to light. We know that good that comes from overcoming evil, or light that comes from overcoming darkness, is significantly higher and purer than light without darkness and good without negativity. It's the obstacles, it's the challenges that cause a greater revelation of good or light. Nevertheless, when we're reading, look, I'm placing before you today a blessing. Shabbos Rosh Chodesh Elu Shinetno Ani Ledori V'Dori Avodas Adam L'Mayla Dafka. Okay, so now we're just emphasizing even more the contradiction between the month of Elul, where the blessings are coming first, that we need to put the effort, and Parshas Re'eh, where God is saying, I'm giving you the blessing. Gimel. לכאורה אפשר לבור זה על פי השנתו, שכיוון שחודש אלו כולו בעבודה לכל השנה כולו. Okay, first of all, we have to understand, generally speaking, that the month of Elul is connected to the service of the entire year. Teshana ha'chelufas v'hein ha'kana teshana haba. In the month of Elul, we are doing tshuva. We are looking back it's the last month of the Hebrew year. We are looking back in the past year at things that we maybe didn't do as well as we could have done. Opportunities that we had missed. Things we have want to fix. And at the same time, we're looking forward to the upcoming year, where we're going to be focusing on all the things that we maybe didn't do as good this year. We're going to focus on doing better the upcoming year. So Elul was a very special month. And both of these services are connected to below to above, and from above to below. That the summer month, generally speaking, we have 4 seasons, but often in Judaism, we differentiate only in 2 seasons, the summer and the winter. The summer months starting basically in Nisan, and go up to the month of Elul. And this is Dodili, and this is more focused on God's energy from above. The summer months are warm. It's showing that God's energy is closer to us. In the month of Nisan, we know God redeems us. He took us out of Egypt. So the whole summer month is basically God's energy coming towards us. Whereas when we switch to the winter months, we are switching the energy from us. In the winter months, it's cold. God is farther away. We have to be the ones starting in the month of Elul to do the tshuva, to begin our work of working harder to connect to God. So let's explain that more specifically. That we have to do what's called as a righteous accounting. It's time to really take count. Just like in a business, you focus on doing an accounting of the previous year at the end of the year, right? At the end of in the calendar year, most businesses in the month of December are cleaning up their books, focusing on what they did last year, what they didn't do, and their upcoming year. We have the same idea in Judaism in the month of Elul. So the main service of the summer months, we already said, is from God, from energy from above to below. In the winter months, we're focusing on the upcoming months and tshuva, starting with the month of Elul from below to above. So there's to say that these two energies, above to below and below to above, are connected to the 2 days of Rosh Chodesh in the month of Elul. Yom Rishon the Rosh Chodesh, Ugam Hashloshim the Chodesh Menachem Av. That we know that the first day of Rosh Chodesh is the 30th day of Menachem Av. And this is connected more to the end, if you will, of the summer months, where we're still getting God's energy from above. And the second day of Rosh Chodesh is the first day of the month of Elul. And now we're beginning the service of our connecting to God from what we say below to above. And this is emphasized even more in this year. On that year, Rosh Chodesh was on Shabbat and Yom Rishon. And this year coming up, it's Rosh Chodesh is the first day of the week, it's Sunday, and the second day, Monday. And we see the beginning of that, the first day from above to below, in the year that the Rebbe gave the Sikha. Hold on a second. And also we see the opposite, and the second day of Rosh Chodesh that year, which is the first day of the week, is emphasizing the 6 days of the week, which is the general service of us connecting to God from below to above. That's up, Dov. And according to this, we can understand the connection and relevance to Parshas Re'eh, the Shabbat. Rosh Chodesh Elul, the Kevan Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh Elul, hu the Oidam Yom Rishon, the Rosh Chodesh hu Yom Hashloshim, the Chodesh Menachem Av. V'dgash bo yoyser ois v'ma'avor lamata. So since the first day of Rosh Chodesh was on Shabbat, that emphasizes even more the energy of above to below. That's the day of Shabbat, the day of rest, where we don't have to put that effort towards connect to God, where He gives us the blessings. And then the first day of the month of Elul that year was on Yom Rishon, the first day of the week, which is emphasizing even more the energy from below to above of our work of starting out in the work week, if you will. David. The oifen the avodah the mata l'mayla. But we have to see even more what it says in Parshas Re'eh, the relevance also to the service from below to above. Ach, shekuriya the Parshas Re'eh b'Shabbos mervarchim b'chodesh Elul or b'Shabbos Rosh Chodesh Elul he b'siyai Moshe Chodesh Menachem Av. So we see that the last day, of course, of Menachem Av is Rosh Chodesh, and the first day of Elul is Rosh Chodesh as well. And mainly, Yom Shabbat is connected to the month of Elul. Hein b'noga Shabbos Mavrachim Chodesh Elul. Te'enini hamshacha b'racha the Chodesh Elul. Hein b'noga the Shabbos Rosh Chodesh Elul. She'af shach the minyan hayamim the Chodesh Menachem Av. Yom Rishon the Rosh Chodesh Elul. Okay. V'od ve'ikar gam Chodesh Menachem Av. Shach kavar the Chodesh Tishrei. Kedua ben Hag Yisrael. Simcha Esther ba'av ve'erech mevachim ish esrehu bracha kesiva kasafi kesiva toiva. I always forget to do this, but as the Rebbe says now, it is our custom that starting on, let's see here, Chimisha Esther ba'av, starting from the 15th day of Av, which has already passed because now it's the 25th day of Av in the Hebrew calendar. Anytime you sign your name to someone or you send someone something, you're supposed to sign. Most people do it starting in Elul. It's our custom to start on the 15th of Menachem Av, usually forgotten by most, but at a minimum, start now and do it in the month of Elul. Anytime you're sending an email, a letter, writing someone, an SMS, ideally you write at the end, Kesiva v'chasima toiva. L'shana tova umasuka. Will you be signed and sealed for good for a happy and a sweet year. Kurumas b'mazal shechodesh Menachem Av mazal Riyah, and we know that the month of Menachem Av, the mazal, the horoscope, if you will, of the energy, is the lion. Rosh Tovis Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Hashanah Rabbah. היינו שבחודש מנחם אב נרמז גם לשלמוס חסימה טובה, פתחת טובה ראש השנה. ועל כל צריך להבין שפרשת ראה, well, I'm just trying to skip the brackets for brevity's sake, שייכוס גם לאופן בעבודה דומה למטה למעלה. עניין העיקר של חודש אלו אני לדודי. אוקיי, כמודגש גם בתוך הפרשה שסיון וחייסן. חג הסוכס Tislecha. And we know that the Hayom Tov the Chodesh HaChorev Sheshaychus the Seder Avoda Ani Ledodi. Okay, and everything comes to its culmination. So we begin this process in the end of Menachem Av, where we are now. We start wishing each other you should be signed and sealed for a book of life for a happy and sweet year. Then we know after Rosh Hashanah until we get to Yom Kippur, we say Gemar Chasim Tov, it's already signed, it should be sealed for a happy year. And then everything culminates with all these festivals. We have the days of awe, which is Rosh Hashanah through actually the month of Elul through Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And then we have the days of joy, which all the energy of the tshuva we did connects through Sukkot, ending with Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah, to bring forth the end of the Yom Tovim in the beginning of the winter months, which is Tishrei, which is the ultimate. Now it's like we know that after the Farbrengen, we have the final Farbrengen that right after Simchas Torah, we know the Gabbai announces Yaakov Holech L'Darkei, that Yaakov now goes on his way. After all this excitement of the month of Elul and the month of Tishrei, now we got to go back into the work world, the real world as they call it, and start cracking and really start taking our good resolutions to task and bringing them into fruition. Hey, yesh mar habiro bezeh v'hakdam mishnatosh b'chodesh Elul yishna melamata l'mayla ani ledodi melamata melamata lemata gam hachibor ani ledodi v'dodidi. Okay. So there is to say that we need to explain this idea that we, as we said already, the month of Elul, the main energy we're focusing on is unifying these two energies of below to above. I am to God, and God is to me, above to below. Ani ledodi v'dodili. Shemitziruf shnehem yachad nasi shmo. And the name Elul is referring to the fact that both of these things are taking place. Our energy of connecting to God and God's energy of connecting to us. In other words, it's not one and the other, even though it generally speaking is coming from us. That's the time that we are the ones who are doing tshuva. In fact, most Baal tshuvas I know, including myself, started tshuva in the month of Elul because it's a very opportune time, as we will discuss further on, where it says the king is in the field, where we're really in a position to connect to God could always connect to God. But in the month of Elul, it's much more open and visible, where God is becoming more available to us. So it's an opportune time to do tshuva. And at the same time, the more energy, the more effort we put forth, the more we get back from Hashem and all the blessings that will carry us forth, not only for the holidays, but for the entire year, the upcoming year. So it's a very special time. So there is an advantage to Ani Ledodi over Dodili. In other words, our energy or our arousal to God over his to us. And there's God Ani Ledodi. And there's an advantage of God's energy to us over us to him. And of course, in typical Rebbe fashion, the ultimate goal and the ultimate place that we want to go to with this is both of them unified together. I don't want to get ahead of myself, so I'm not going to. Let's just continue inside. But I think it's this week's Sikha. I'm positive it's this week's Sikha, where it's very special with the Rebbe connects these energies together. Let's see. And the advantage of our service, of us to our beloved, to God. As we say, which is an arousal from below, meaning we're the ones who start the action, if you will. So the Rebbe says like this: we are limited beings, right? Ultimately, and I don't want to go too far off topic, but what God wants is the service of our hearts. He knows we're flesh and blood. He knows we're going to make mistakes. He knows we're not always going to do the right thing, and yet He continues to give us opportunities all the time to do tshuva, to go higher and higher. Tshuva, or meaning return, is not just for people like me or like Dov who are out, partying and living a very not knowledge of God lifestyle. It's for all of us. We all must do tshuva. We must continue all the time to work on our connection to God. Imagine if you had a business and you never made any effort to improve your business. It's not going to be very successful, because the second you go into what we call as maintaining, right? There's building and there's maintaining. Maintaining is much easier than building, right? If you're going to build a building from the ground up, that's a lot of work. Once the building is there, you just got to basically make sure all the things are functioning properly, right? In our service of God, just like in our service of any type of business or any type of relationship, the effort that we put forth is usually pretty well corresponding to the results we get back. Most successful businessmen will tell you. I don't know if I want to consider myself a successful businessman, but I have had varying levels of success in my business career. And there's no getting lucky. It's hard work. The people who work hard are the ones who get lucky. It's really all about how much energy you put in. Excuse me. So it's the same thing with God. For some reason, people think that just like blessings are just supposed to fall out of the sky without us having to do anything. Where in fact, it's not true. And that's what the Rebbe is saying now. We are limited, but the more energy, the more effort we put forth, the more we get back. So it's the energy of the heart. We have to keep going deeper and deeper. The idea is to open up our hearts. You should be able to get to a point where you could go out into a field if there's no one there, or feel comfortable, and be able to cry, to scream out from God from the depths of your heart. There's a difference in saying, come on, God, help me out. You got to do this business over. Saying, Hashem, like put out your whole being. That takes work. That takes avoda. So our service in Ani Lododi and connecting to God is limited based on where we're holding in our current life. The more we work towards opening our heart, towards connecting to God, the more energy we put forth, the more energy God returns. It's almost like a mirror system. The more we put forth up, the more comes down from up down. It's really like mathematics. Excuse me. So it's limited. It's limited to what our capacities are. How much we put forth is how much we get back. And the advantage of God's energy to us is that God has no boundaries. He has no limit. One of the names of God is Ein Sof, meaning forever. That means that God's capacity to give us blessings is infinite, because God's infinite. So there's infinite capabilities that God has for each one of us. Each one of us has potential to have infinite blessings in our life, in every aspect. And for better or worse, here in America, we measure success by finances, which is a bunch of crap. Because don't get me wrong, money's nice, but it's one aspect of life. There's so many other areas, right? Obviously, there's health, there's family, there's friendships, there's community, there's giving back to your community, there's enjoying, there's hobbies, there's many things that go into this kind of cycle of life, and we should never be hyper focused on one of them. So all those blessings have tremendous potential, and God has the ability to deliver those blessings. What we say is Ein Sof, without any limitation. But Lashon Chassidus, as Chassidus explains, the place of God's arousal from above to below, from Him to us. There's nothing we could possibly do to reach that capacity, because we're finite and God is infinite. And the drawing down of that energy from God above to us below has no limits. No limits. As we sing in the Hasidic song, the Kasim Lacha Bracha, Abli Dai, that you'll send me, blessings until my lips say enough. I can't handle it, right? Amen. We should all have that problem when we have to say to God, it's too much blessings, hold it back, Anyhow, Shaloche Nikra Adam Li Shemura A Nitzichoit. Excuse me. Call Makoim Shanamar Li Ani Leolam. Abole Eda. Harizen Ligilu Malamala. Sheino. Excuse me. Bo Aida Avodas Adam. So this true energy of God sending down to us is really above what our capacity is. But the way God sets up the world is he doesn't want us to have what's called the bread of shame. Where if someone just keeps giving you things, there's no value. You'll just take it for granted. So the idea is that we should put forth the work. So when we experience the blessings, they have value. They're meaningful. And of course, the ultimate completion is the advantage of us connecting to God and God connecting to us, both of those together. And this is what Elul is. It's both of these things together. Ani, avodas Adam, which is our service. Li, bli gvul, without boundaries or limitations. Hanu shegam avodas Adam, hi ba'ifin shlamara medina hagbala. So the Rebbe is saying now that the idea is that if we can tap into, kind of what do they call this? A hack or a cheat sheet or a glitch in the matrix, whatever they call it, to God's energy. We have the potential to have bli gvul, in other words, unlimited potential. When we could tap into this godly energy in a high level, our connection to God from us, limited people, can kind of, I don't want to use the word hijack, it's not a nice word, but piggyback off of God's infinite capabilities. And therefore, we have the ability as limited beings to receive infinite blessings from an infinite God. But the impetus is on us. Let me continue. And I think the Rebbe is going to tie this together much nicer in a nice little ribbon than what we've been saying so far. Okay. Givul Kavin, Torah, Tefillah, V'Gemol Chasidim. There's three general lines of how we connect to God. So in other words, we're talking a lot about this energy of who doesn't want, if we told anyone, how would you like infinite blessings? Not interested. Of course, everyone's interested in that. But are you willing to do what it takes to get to the infinite blessings, right? So our connection to God can't be based on some random thing that we feel we want. Right? When I was in yeshiva in Israel, we used to go on Nitzoyim every Friday to put tefillin on other Jews, and we used to go to Tel Aviv, which is one of the most secular places probably in the world, even though it's filled with Jews. And we'd go up to random Jews in the streets, ask them to put on tefillin. God's in my heart. I don't need this. Okay, but God wants to be on your arm and he wants to be on your head. In other words, God has instructed us. God said, if you want these infinite blessings, right? I'm putting before you today a blessing. I'm giving you a blessing. God's saying, you want a blessing? Here's how you get it. There's three general lines that the world is held up on. Torah, tefillah, or prayer, and good deeds, mitzvot. Those are the three columns that connect us above. But now there's a fourth level, which is called tshuva, which is return. And the fifth level is geula, which is redemption. And our general service is connected to the three levels of Torah, Tefillah, and Gemol Chasidim, learning Torah, prayer, and good deeds. And they're connected to the three worlds of Bia, which is Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. Bria one second, is connected to the world, is connected to Torah. That is the intellect, if you will. Yetzirah is speech, is connected to davening or prayer. And Asiyah is connected to mitzvot. Those are the three general levels of our soul that are encoded in the body. Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. Nefesh is connected to the body or physical, that's mitzvot. Ruach is connected to the emotions, that's prayer. And the Neshama, the third level of your soul, is your intellect, is Torah. Those are the three first worlds, if you will. היא באופן שלמעלה מדין ההגבלה, האדם העולם, על ידי שדורה עבודת תשובה שניהם. ורוח תשוב אור אלוקים אשר ניתנה. And what's higher than Torah, good deeds, and prayer is called tshuva. That's the fourth world. That's the world of what we call Atzilus. Tshuva is the capacity to return to God irrespective of what you're doing in the other three worlds. In other words, you're not keeping Torah, you're not doing mitzvot, and you're not praying. But you can do tshuva and reconnect to God and then begin that process of fulfilling those three lines. In other words, the gates of tshuva are never closed. We always have the opportunity to return. And when we return to God, guess what? God returns to us. He's always here, but he returns in a present way. And that's why tshuva is the higher world. It's the highest. It's connected to the fourth world, the world of Atzilus. Odom Atzilus, Odom Revi, the fourth world. And then we have the fifth world, or the fifth level of the soul, which is the Yechida, and that is Geula, or redemption. And it's not redemption, it's completely above from the four worlds of what we call Hishtalshalus, which is the chain of creation. From the worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah. How God brings energy or spiritual matter and turns it into physical matter. And this is the Yechida of our soul, the fifth level. Explain it a different way. The service of our general work is here from below to above, which is Anila Doidi. Which is generally compared to how much capacity we have. Each one has their own, right? It's like lifting weights. You know, a stronger person can lift more weights. Someone who's worked on themselves more and whose heart is more open has a capacity to pray and connect to God on a deeper level than someone who doesn't. And it's like any amuna, prayer, opening your heart to God is like anything else. You have to work at it, right? You don't go into the gym your first day and come out of there, pumped up like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime. It takes work to get stronger. Anytime you use a muscle, and your brain is a muscle, your heart is a muscle, your amuna is a muscle, your bitachon is a muscle, you must work it out. And the way to work it out is to deal with it, is to be put in challenging situations, which none of us like, and keep passing the tests. And maybe you won't pass them the first time, but you keep going higher and higher levels. And therefore, and this is the point when you traverse through these levels, through Torah, Tefillah, Gemot Chasidim, and Tshuva, you wind up in Geula. What is redemption? Redemption is when you're basically living the way God put you in this world to be. You're fulfilling your divine purpose of why you're here. You're living up to what, as they say, is your potential. That's redemption. Redemption is when you reach a place when you're fulfilling why you're here in this world. And there's levels in redemption because everything's infinite. The Shamadam, because literally the part of our soul is literally part of God. We are the Yechida of our soul, which is totally connected and one with God. And at this level, God and the Jewish people are truly one. In other words, that potential, that oneness that we have with God is always there. It's just a matter of tapping into it and bringing it, as they say, manifesting it into a reality in your life. And that takes work, my friends, just like anything else in the world, right? It's just when we have a CFO, a fractional CFO, chief financial officer in our office. And it's not easy. Like most business people, I have a law firm. Just we go through constant. We've been as low as 12 employees. We've been as high as 40, 45 employees. It's constantly going up and down depending on what's going on. But it's never easy. You go through periods where it's easier, and you go through periods where it's harder. And our financial advisor told me one time, he said, listen, if running a small or medium-sized business was easy, everyone would do it, right? If it was easy to become a millionaire, everyone would be a millionaire. Unfortunately, we live in a world where people have convinced themselves wrongfully so, that easy and good are the same, and hard and bad are the same. If you have to work hard, it's bad. If you don't have to do anything, it's good. And it's not real. It's really not real. Any successful person, and again, not just financial, it could be sports, it could be relationships, it could be anything you want to plug in there, will tell you it took a lot of work to get where they are. And that's ultimately where the blessings come. And from God, it's no different. God is saying, I'm here. You all have the potential for redemption, to live in a state of Geula consciousness, but it takes work. Okay. Wow. The Parshas Re'eh. And now we're going to connect, of course, Parshas Re'eh, which we've been talking about, and the month of Elul. As already said, the month of Elul is connected to two advantages connected together. Us to God and God to us. צריך האדם להיות בדרגה נעלה שלמעלה מדיר ההגבלה. על זה שמגלה את מציאות אמיתית אחד עם הקדוש ברוך הוא. This is just so powerful, what the Rebbe said. He's saying that these two energies of us working to connect to God and then God connecting to us, ultimately, if they're done to their shleimus, their completion, turn into a state of oneness where you're one with God, where it's no longer that you're fighting to connect to God and you're working to bring his energy down. You reach what we say is a state of oneness with God, which is the goal. And then you have the potential of Bli Gvul. In other words, God comes alive within you, and everything you do has the potential for success above the normal courses of nature. And this is what we see. Look before you today. I'm placing before you a blessing as a preface to the service of man, including all the details of doing and not doing. In other words, the positive and negative commandments. שאומרים לו, ראה, שצריך להיות לא בדרגה של שמיעה, גם בדרגה של ראה. ראה means seeing. It's above hearing, as we open up the sikha talking about. Anochi, mi she'anochi. Anochi, high level of God. No, it's same as giving. With a good eye. The eye nefeh. L'fanecha, before you, into your inner being. In other words, God is giving you a blessing. With a good eye, he wants to bless you, and he wants those blessings to permeate your being. So it's not what we say is chitzoni, it's in your kishkas, as they say. Hayoim, or vigilui, it should be revealed. You should see the blessing, because everything God does is a blessing, but we want to see it. And it should be eternal and permanent. Not just a one-time thing where, oh, wow, God blessed me today, and now I don't feel it anymore. Always. Okay. Okay. And this is emphasized in general the service of man who this obviously seems to be the blessings from above to below, from God to us. Everything we just explained about Parshas Re'eh. So now, again, the Rebbe is connecting these two things together, the blessing from above to below and below to above, that they should be infused into a state of oneness. Skipping the brackets. And we see the completion of the Parsha where it talks about the festival of Sukkot. which culminates in Shmini Atzeres, the 8th day. Because in Shmini Atzeres, it's a day that, during the 7 days of Sukkot, all the nations of the world bring offerings to God. But on the 8th day, Shmini Atzeres, God says, this is for me and the Yidden. It's our time to rule around together, to be just us. Yisrael, it's a day just for us together with God. So the point the Rebbe is getting at is, just to sum up what we've been saying over the last 7 paragraphs, is the fact that Elu is emphasizing Anil Dododi V'Dodidi. I am to my beloved and my beloved is to me, meaning the service from us below to God above, and then God from above to below. Coinciding with Parshas Re'eh, which God is saying, look, I'm giving you, I'm the one who's giving the blessing to you, meaning above to below. They're coming together. The idea is that we should continue to arouse ourselves, right? So if you look at a Jewish story, Magen David, right? There's a triangle going up and a triangle coming down. The triangle going up that's the Rusa de la Tata. That's the energy from us up to God. The triangle coming down is the energy from God down to us. The more we push up, the more it comes down, right? It's like you look at like 2 ends of the world, right? Let's say like there's a globe, and the arrow starts like this up, and the arrow starts like this down, and they come around the world. And the arrow that's pointing up starts coming down, and the arrow that's pointing down starts coming up, and they fuse together. That space in the middle is the oneness between us and God. And that's the idea. The idea is that we continue to do tshuva. We continue to work and work and work on ourselves and work on ourselves and work on ourselves. And we do so until we get to this point where we reach a state of oneness with God. And the idea, that's the Rebbe says so many times in these sichos, that the Jewish people, the Torah, and God are one. And the way we get to that level is through the Torah and through tshuva and through the 4 levels we just spoke about, right? Torah, good deeds, prayer, and tshuva will reach us to Geula. And Geula is when we get to that state of fusion, that oneness, where it's no longer, okay, it's me, it's the Torah, and it's God, but God, the Torah, and I are one. We're in a total state of flow. That is what redemption's about. That's how it will all be for all of us when Moshiach comes. But as we know, the Rebbe has already opened up those channels, and we have the existence right now. And that's what this whole idea is about, this idea of from below to above and above to below, to reach the state of homeostasis, of oneness, of just total bliss, equilibrium, if you Zion. And there is to add to this the fact that Rosh Chodesh Elul fell on Shabbos that year. We know that Shabbat is the highest, it's the holiest day of the year. As life gets more challenging and the world out there, it's so crazy. We just came back from vacation from my family. We went to Acadia National Park in Maine. It was absolutely beautiful. And when I go away with my family, I shut my phone off. This time was for weeks, sometimes it's for 2 weeks. And part of me shutting my phone off is not just to, give me a break from the outside world, but including the news, the games, of any of that electronic. I don't go on the internet. I don't go on the phone. I'm just totally together in nature. So my wife, we're here for a week, out in nature, hiking, going on the boats, just like being totally one with nature. And you see how beautiful the world is God created. And I'm like, if we never put on the news and had no idea what was going on in the world, and we just lived in this reality, we would say, wow, the world's unbelievable. It's amazing. There's so much goodness here. You start putting on the news and social media, and all of a sudden the noise comes in, and you're like, oh my God, there's so much evil, there's so much bad, there's so much horrible, the world's coming to an end, there's wars, there's war. But if we shut that noise off, we realize It's really a beautiful place. So the idea is that obviously we can't hide from the world. We have to be in the world. We have to be part of the world. But the idea is to try to connect as much as we can to ourselves and our mission and to Hashem. And part of nature is part of that, where the noise in the world becomes less significant and less of a focal point, because the world's gone nuts. It really has. And the less you focus on it, the better off you are. We have more than enough work to do, right? We don't have time to be messing around and being critics at everyone else. Okay, and that's the idea, to reach the state of oneness. Zion, all right, we already said that. So Shabbat is the time, as the world gets crazier out there, that we say, wow. When Shabbat comes now, it's like, wow, I look forward to Shabbat so much. Because Shabbat is a special time. It's a time that we are connected to a level that's not normal during the work week. And the fact that year Rosh Chodesh Elul started on Shabbat is emphasizing the connection of this work. The Again, the Rebbe is just talking about the fact that these 2 days of Rosh Chodesh Elul are connected to these two different energies. Rosh Chodesh Shelehem Beis Yamin Klal Hiyoy Shabbos Rosh Chodesh Boyfriend Shel Rosh Chodesh Hal B'Yom Hal based the Rosh Chodesh Hal B'Shabbat. Masha'in came Rosh Chodesh El Kosh Hal B'Shabbat. I said the item Boyfriend Shel Rosh Chodesh Hu B'Yom HaShabbat. The base Rosh Chodesh B'Yom HaChol. יש לומר שבזה מודגש בעבודה אני לדודי אינו באופן המין הקול הכבד תחילה באופן של חול ואחר כך באופן של שבת אלא היא תחילה באופן של שבת. It's beginning. Usually the way it works is that it says it goes from easier to harder. Like as the week goes on, as we get closer to Shabbat, it's start off the first day of the week, you got a lot of energy. Towards the end of the week, you're draining us. But in that year, since it started on Shabbat, you had the opposite. The energy was already starting from above. Okay, ches. The Indian mudgash yoyser b'yom haShabbat atzmo b'kadima had the Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. First, we see the emphasizing of Shabbat even more as it's connected to Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. Af sheb'yom zeh yishnei beis inyanim der Shabbos Rosh Chodesh makom Indian shel Shabbat koidem umidgash. Yoyser inyanim shel Rosh Chodesh. Kamudgash b'tafil lo yisayod shel nusach tafil hu shel Shabbat. In the special prayer we say in Shabbat, Ela shel mosafim u'zicharim gam in shel Rosh Chodesh. V'al derech zeh bracha hazman. Shel friza v'dechel in Shabbos. It's connecting basically the I'm going to skip through this part just because I'm extremely tired. I just got back. I didn't get much sleep. The connection between Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh and both of these energies. And again, bringing the completion of what we say is of the month and the day of the week. And yeah, I'm going to skip through that part right now. Let's hop over to Tess because as I speak, my eyes are starting to close. Didn't get much sleep last night when I got back. Okay, the Parshas Re'eh. Okay, now in addition, we want to connect even more Parshas Re'eh with the month of Elul. Hu b'hadgasha miyucheres the Shabbos Rosh Chodesh Elul the Shanas Toshnun Aleph. The year that I will show you wonders. Bakdam. Shavodas Hadam Boifin Shlamara Mahadinam Hagbara, the Mitis Tashlema Shekos, Rak Gula Mitis Tashlema Mashik Tzikin. And this service we're talking about, where we become in a state of oneness with God, where our energy, so to speak, taps in a God's energy of B'li Gvul. That means we have unlimited potential. That is going to reach its completion in the true and complete redemption. When Moshiach comes, it will, again, we can tap into that now, but it will reach its completion when we get to the into the days of Mashiach in a complete way. That the Yechida is the level of the general soul of all the Jewish people. The We know that Mashiach is what we call the Yechida Klalit. He has the general Yechida of all the Yechida levels of all of ours together. And each one of us has our own Yechida that connects to him. Dargas HaChamishiach, and that's the level of Mashiach inside of our us. And this penetrates all of our service. And we see this emphasized even more in the month of and it says that I will wait for him every day until he comes, talking about Mashiach's coming, that we will every day anticipate eagerly Mashiach's coming. And we already know that we are at the end, literally the end of the exile, or the final days of the exile. And we're reaching the completion of our service as a nation. That year is the Rosh Tevis of the year I will show you wonders. And just like when I took you out of Egypt, I will show you wonders. It's God's promise to us when we go out of the exile. And looking before you in actuality, the wonders that God is going to perform for us, that he is going to bring us to redemption. He's talking about two energies of redemption. Redemption b'klalit and redemption b'pratit. We have the general redemption of all of us going out of Egypt in the complete Geula. And we have the individual redemptions, which are available to each one of us right now. And this is God saying, look before you and I'm going to show you wonders. I'm going to show you Geula if you follow the path that I'm showing you, as we've been learning about tonight, what that path is. And this we see a little example of that as when God took the Jewish people out of Russia. Russia was called the Iron Crucible. You couldn't get out. You were not allowed to leave. You were there forever. And all of a sudden, the Rebbe predicted it years before it happened. The Iron Curtain fell, and the Jewish people left. Went out to Israel. A lot of them to America, but most of them to Israel. And that's just an idea. When we went out of Egypt, if you would have told the people a few weeks before, oh, by the way, you're going to be free in a few weeks. Yeah, sure. It's, in other words, exile, when you're going through a hard time in your life. We're going through a hard time. The nation of the Jewish people are going through a very hard time right now. I'm not going into the details, but it's open and obvious what a challenging time we're going through. And at the same time, in our individual lives, each one of us has individual challenges and difficulties we're going through. And at times it can seem like the darkness is not going to end. But the Rebbe is letting us know that just like when he took us out of Russia, just like when he took us out of Egypt, it says the redemption will come b'keref ayin, in a blink of an eye. Meaning out of nowhere, when you least expect it, boom, God can take you and will take you out of your troubles and difficulties. And this is, we see how he brought us to a true life, talking about the Jews who took out of Russia, to a life of Torah and mitzvahs. In Russia, you were not allowed to keep Torah or mitzvah. And we see, of course, through the Chabad emissaries, Rostov, Petersburg. We see there were so many cities in Russia that were strongholds of communist oppression. And now there's Chabad houses, there's shluchim there. They're learning Torah and spreading Chassidus. And the place that if you would have done that in the times of communist Russia, you'd be sent to a death sentence or to Siberia. Kama v'kama, or before the Nasi Chabad, Memshech HaMelech HaDoros, and Israel HaShluchim, Shel Nasi Chabad, but the rain will come because Shemar Admor Be'ira Habira, Shel Medina. And see, the Frierdiker Rebbe even sent emissaries to Russia. How much more so our Rebbe? Spreading out the well springs of the Torah, the Hasidus, the deeper dimension of the Torah, in Russia in a tremendous way that was never possible before. And it happened like this. And in this year itself, as we're standing already in Rosh Chodesh Elul, Chodesh Cheshvan Shel Kol HaShana, the month where we must do a righteous accounting for the entire year. Asher Chesek B'Kol the Cheshbon Hu Ad Masa. The Rebbe says this, and he emphasizes this a lot. Every Jew needs to scream out Ad Masa. Mashiach isn't here because we don't want him bad enough. In other words, we've got so adjusted to the exile. Our eyes have gotten so accustomed to living in dark that we say it's not so bad, right? Well, think about the hostages that are still in a hole in freaking Gaza right now for 2 years. And everyone's putting pressure on Israel. Do you believe it? They're putting pressure on Israel to stop the war. How come no one's putting pressure on Hamas to release the hostages? It's complete suicide. It's insanity. They're sitting in a hole. Horrible. You see the conditions they're living in. They show the video of one of the hostages, like, I mean, totally just horrible, like Holocaust, skin and bones. And everyone's like, oh, look how terrible. Like, what do you think Hamas is doing? They think they're feeding them birthday cake and celebrating with them? They're torturing them. They're the worst things they're doing. And no one in the world is saying anything. Nothing. But Israel, you must stop doing this. You must stop doing this. You must stop doing this. It makes no logical sense. It's pure hatred. It's pure anti-Semitism. So we have to be able to scream, Ad Masai. Scream to God. Talk to the world. The world doesn't care. The world can kush mentuchas. We have to scream out to God. God, redeem us. Ad Masai. How long do we need to put up with this? Every one of us should be screaming every day for Mashiach. We should be demanding Mashiach, even if our lives are hunky-dory and good for our brothers and sisters who are suffering around the world. We should be screaming Ad Masai. That's the first thing. If we're not saying Ad Masai, if we're not davening on a regular basis, and I don't mean, okay, Mashiach, Bim Haravi, Amenu. I mean, if we're not davening from our hearts on a regular basis for God to bring Geula, something is wrong. Something's wrong. Our connection's off. So the Rebbe says the first thing of Rechesh Bonatzeret in this month of Elul that we need to say is Ad Masai. We have to demand that God redeem us. So the Rebbe said the fact that we're still sitting here and we're still in the exile, so to speak, even though the Rebbe said later on in the Sichas that Mashiach is already here. Earlier on, he said we're still in the exile. This should be enough that we need to scream out to God. What are you doing? Why are you not bringing Geula? And we could see in the space Parsha, and look before, and I will see you a blessing I'm placing before you today. And the ultimate blessing, of course, is the true and complete redemption. That we should see with our physical eyes. That we must demand for God that this blessing that you are giving to us, it shouldn't be something that it's there, we don't see it, or we should see with our physical eyes the blessing of redemption. And when Mashiach has to come, what we say is mamish, like in a physical, revealed way. Yud. Pratius Yosef. And emphasize even more the connection to the true and complete redemption in all the details. Yom HaShabbos, Ma'ayin V'Dugmas, Yom Shluchu Shabbos Menucha Ha'Elamim. That Shabbos is a foretaste of the true and complete redemption. Prata Shabbos Shlishi, Shabbos Sheva V'Nachum, and especially the third Haftorah of the 7 Haftorahs of comforting. יום אחד ראש חודש אלול שראש החודש בכל קשרים כאולה שהם מסירים מחדש כמויסוי בפרט ראש החודש אלול שבו תכף מסמיכוס לחודש מנחם אב שמו של Mashiach. And the Rebbe says, well, first of all, we see that the first day of Rosh Chodesh Elul is connected to the month of Elul, and the second day. The first day of Rosh Chodesh is still connected to Menachem Av, and as the Rebbe says, as he said numerous times, Shmo Shel Mashiach, that Mashiach's name is Menachem. The Rebbe said this at least 6 or 7 times in these sichos, that Mashiach's name is Menachem. Shnoda and B'chodesh Mazalu Ariya, and it knows that Mashiach's energy came into the world in the month of Menachem Av, the month of the lion, and that the lion is referring to God, and it's also referring to the base of Migdash. And the 30th day of the month of Av, Gamar Chodesh Menachem is a completion of the whole month of Menachem Av. Asher gam yinei habriti ritzuim shehebo enu ela al mana shevo ariya v'yavana yiriya, and all the undesirable things that proceeded in the month of Menachem Av are gone. Now we're only focusing on the positive things: the rebuilding of the base of Migdash, the birth of Mashiach. The redemption should be in order that we could see it. And we end off this week's parsha with the completion of Sukkot, which is connected to Shmini Atzeres, the end. And the number 8 is connected to redemption. Mudgash Gam Haftorah, and we see also in the Haftorah the Av Shekachol Shabbos Parshas Re'eh Rosh Chodesh Elul Ein Maspichin Shabbat Menachem. One of the Elul b'Haftorah Shabbat Rosh Chodesh Havigam Haftorah the Shabbat Rosh Chodesh Shaychus the Teichem Inin Nachaman Ki Noisef Lachach Shehi Bisparash Yishyael B'Sefer Yishyael Kulo Nachamaster U'B'Parsha Hu Inin Hanacham K'Sheish Echad Shmo Hanachamaster. Talking about in the prophet Yeshayahu, and the end is referring to the comforting of redemption. These 7 haftorahs are very powerful. If you look at last week's haftorah, it'll knock your socks off. Parshas Yeshayahu, talking about how things will be, and in the redemption in the times of Mashiach. It's talking about the different psuchim from the Haftorah, etc. Talking about the comforting that God will bring us. Going through the different Haftorahs for the month of Har Chodesh, referring just all to where we're in. There's 7 weeks of comforting between after Tisha B'Av to Rosh Hashanah, where every Haftorah is connected to God comforting us for all the challenges and difficulties He put us through. And the Rebbe is just making some touchstones on these different Haftorahs. Excuse me. Yod Aleph. We're going to finish early because my eyeballs are slowly fading out of my head. But no, going to fall as it comes to action. Yesh leparsem the orer b'kol mekom al derek avoda miuchet the chodesh elu. Rumezes b'chamisha roshei tevis Torah tefillah gemot chasidi tshuva v'geula. So first of all, the Rebbe says we must advertise and arouse all of those in all places about the unique special service in this month of Elul that is hinted on these 5 levels, which is the Rosh Teva of Torah, Tefillah, Gemot Chasidim, Tshuva, v'Geula. V'Hadgasha b'Yuchedes b'Gnoga l'Rosh Chodesh Chamish she'inin ha'Geula k'fi she'choyderes b'Kol inin ha'Avoda, and all of our work should be penetrated into these matters. All direction dorim na'asim b'rucha shel Geula. V'Torah Tzifiyah v'Idias Gomorrah v'Shtechach v'Yak mamish ro'im ani b'Sar hinizeh melech HaMashiach bo, that we shall see with our physical eyes Mashiach, but pashtus in a simple sense. The hachriz of farseh makom makom, we must announce, proclaim, and advertise in all places. But the varim hayotziim min halev, with words that go out from the heart. Shakodesh Baruch Hu Amar, that God says, the call Echad ve'Echad Yisrael, to every one of the Jewish people, Re'eh ani nosein lifanecha hayoim bracha, that I am placing before you today a blessing. Va'ad shechayoim mamish, literally mamish, like in the most physical sense. Ru'im be'eni basar, bracha agul mitzvah shleim, that you will see with your physical eyes the blessing of the true and complete redemption. So the Rebbe says, emphasized. Okay, skipping the brackets, Yud base. Yiratzon may be God's will. That all these words we said in this special Shabbos, the that the true and complete redemption through our righteous Redeemer should happen in actuality. But prat kasherim ze im amiras l'chaim vadut chasidus, and we should have chasidish farbrengens. We say l'chaim to one another. But roiv im doras hamelach, in a way that's fitting for the king. The beit haKnesset, the beit hamidrash, the beit masim tovi, cover Kodesh Avrahami Nasi the rain, especially in 770. L'chaim the rach, and we say l'chaim and a blessing for life and blessings. The call hamsiyovim kan. But all those that are here, and all the Yidden wherever they may be, the rech kulanu kechat, call habrachos, saying the fanecha yom rach, that I will bless all of you together as one, in a way that you will see that I'm placing before you a blessing. Today, especially emphasizing the blessing that we shall have a happy and sweet and healthy new year. And how much more so the ultimate blessing and the main blessing of the true and complete redemption of Moshiach, our righteous Redeemer, that every single one of the Yidden of the Jewish people will see literally this blessing in physical way. As it says in the end of this parsha, the blessing of Moshe, the Eni call Yisrael, to the eyes of all the Jewish people. That I, God, will create a new heaven and earth that I will reveal to you with the new Torah Mashiach. And it shall be in the year that I will show you wonders. The new heavens and new earth that will come out from God. And we will have the new Torah. God will renew the entire Torah. And everyone will say together, Amen. As we learn that Amen is even stronger than the blessing. Amen. And it should be in a permanent and a strong way. May it be a God's will. Hashem should bless us all with individual redemption, with general redemption, and we'll see everyone in the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi, where God immediately will avenge our blood and bring redemption to all of our people. God bless you. Moshiach now.